have you not seen The Walking Dead? Oh, wait, no, you haven't seen The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead hasn't been filmed yet.
We all know the truth. More connects us than separates us. But in times of crisis, the wise build bridges, while the foolish build barriers.
You raise walls, I destroy them. Let's see who prevails.
Just because something works doesn't mean that it cannot be improved.
I say we take off and nuke the entire site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
Allow my sword to join you in the fight against evil.
The world needs us to chase dreams.
We have to dedicate ourselves each and every single day to this fight because I can't do it alone.
You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
Welcome to Torture Cinema.
Damnation Alley. What happens in Salt Lake City stays in Salt Lake City, including killer cockroaches.
Too soon, Paul. Too soon.
Too soon. I'm Sean.
I'm Paul.
I'm Alex.
And we are here today to talk about Damnation Alley because our Patreon supporters picked it as the film we were going to watch. And that's it. That's really the only reason we're here.
That's it.
I want to say that I'm disappointed in our Patreon supporters for not picking Lady in the Water so that for once I could be Jen and be like, oh, I actually liked the terrible movie.
Yeah, we should note that Jen was going to be on this podcast, but decided to drink too much before the podcast and then dream of George Papard because Jen says that he is hot.
Only if you find J. Jonah Jameson hot.
Maybe that's Jen's thing. I don't really know. You know, it's not a thing I have probed in Jen's life. But apparently he's likes the A-Team. So, there you go. All right, so why don't we get into what we're drinking? Because we might as well do that. So, Alex, I'll start with you. What are you drinking?
I am drinking a local beer. It is a Pretzel Assassin from Denver Beer Company. And it is nice. It's a nice malty amber lager, and I'm on my second one.
Wow. All right. Getting preloaded. Way to go.
Yeah, I pre-gamed it a bit. Because, well, I had pierogi for dinner, and you gotta have beer with pierogi.
Pierogi.
Yeah.
God, I want some food now. All right, Paul, what about you?
I'm drinking something rather appropriate, and I didn't even plan it this way. So, as you may know, this weekend was 4th Street Fantasy Convention, a local reader-writer focused convention here in Minneapolis, and one of the attendees is Casey Blair, soon to be married in about a month to Django Wexler. Anyway, last year we did a root beer tasting together because it turns out that we both like root beer. We did do a root beer testing this year, but she brought me a relatively uncommon root beer that I can't find here called, this is appropriate for Damnation and go across the country, Route 66 root beer.
Ooh.
Nice.
I'm not sure how it tastes. I haven't taken a sip yet. We'll find out if I start gagging. But she likes it, so I am pretty sure I'm going to like this too.
You'll be like, it's like psychedelic skies.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what are you drinking, Sean?
All right, well, I was going to break out the peach moonshine that I had from Old Smoky, but then I realized that I want my liver to still be functioning after this, and this movie is actually not that terrible to deserve that. I should have broke that out for Cull, but fuck that movie. So instead, I'm drinking 2 from Summit Brewing. One is their Slugfest Juicy IPA, and then I will finish the night with their Cabin Crusher, which is a Kolsch-style ale with lime. Both of them are pretty solid. I like the Kolsch especially, but the Juicy IPA is a solid IPA. And yes, as some people on the internet say, I am pretentious because I like IPAs.
See, I don't think IPAs are like a pretentious thing. I think IPAs have sort of become like a bullshit dick measuring thing because they're like, oh, it's like a triple IPA that'll turn your face inside out. Are you cool enough? And you're like, I would just like a regular IPA, please. It's the summer. My masculinity is not threatened by the IPA-ness of this IPA.
But Summit is a local brewing company to Minnesota, so Sean is supporting a company that is built in Minnesota, so I applaud him for that.
Specifically in your town, Paul, St. Paul.
Yeah.
Indeed, so I have in the past, when I was drinking alcohol on this podcast, drank some Summits, as you might recall, if listeners might recall now and again. So it is good stuff.
Yeah, the breweries in Minnesota are top notch, let me just say.
I think what we're saying, people that support your local breweries.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan. Yeah, definitely. So, all right, well, we got to get into this film. Who would like to do the summary? I realize that's probably going to take you all of 4 seconds.
I can do the summary.
Go for it, Alex.
So there's a nuclear war. It knocks the Earth off its axis, so the skies are all psychedelic and everything's fucked up. And then George Peppard and his mustache go on a cross-country trip in these kind of cool-looking, like, all-terrain, giant, like 12 tired vehicles, except it's not 12 tires like you'd imagine. And he has like some losers with him and some people die, and we'll get into that later. And then they get to Albany. The end.
That is not inaccurate. That's the scary part.
Oh my god, it's like 80 minutes of driving and staring.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's kind of like going on a road trip, except not as much fun.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say it right here that this movie should have been a short film.
Yeah, it would have been more interesting as a short film. All right, well, we're going to get into it, and by get into it, we're going to flip the script a little bit, because we have all decided, collectively, as a unit, unlike the characters in this movie, to do dislikes first, and then we'll get to likes as our finals. So, I will jump to you, Alex, with your first dislike.
Okay, so, I mean, I know that it's expected for me to go to the low-hanging fruit of how apparently all the lady people died in the apocalypse, except for one. And there had to be one lady person so that when we arrived at the, required plot point of the rapey cannibal cultists, there would be a lady for them to be rapey at. But I'm not. Instead, I'm going to be Sean for a minute, in a way. And I want to talk to you about Madagascar hissing cockroaches.
Do it! Do it!
The thing is, I actually used to volunteer at the local insect zoo, which is called the Butterfly Pavilion at Insect Center. And one of the things I did as a volunteer was I manned the touch cart, where you had like Rosie the rose-haired tarantula, or a giant millipede, or a Madagascar hissing cockroach for kids to touch. And the hissing cockroaches are basically the laziest, nicest insects that have ever lived. Like, all they want to do is hang out on your hand and be gently petted by children. And if you poke them too hard, they just kind of like scoot forward and hiss, and it's a little startling. Like, that's all they do. There was actually one day where I like ate a banana for a snack, and I didn't wash my hands before I went to the touch cart. And then one of the hissing roaches spent the next 20 minutes effectively licking my fingers because they tasted like banana.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, like, these are animals that are so mild-mannered because they cannot fly that you can keep them trapped effectively in their aquarium by just putting a line of Vaseline around the top, because every time they step in it, they'll be like, oh, that's gross, and wash their foot. Oh, that's gross, and then wash their foot, and they can never cross it. Like, that is the level Madagascar hissing cockroaches are on.
I had no idea.
So, when the party gets to Salt Lake City, and there's killer cockroaches, and they're played by either Madagascar hissing roaches, or, I don't know, like, drapes of black fabric with bottle caps glued to them that get pulled along the floor.
I know the answer to this, actually. They're like tied together rubber fake cockroaches on strings that apparently the studio kept in after they stole the film from the director and then basically rewrote the film in editing. But yeah, they're like carpets of rubber fake cockroaches that just look terrible. But
yeah. So we have Madagascar hissing cockroaches playing evil flesh-eating cockroaches, which, I mean, I'm sure we could write, like, a paper on why there would be evil flesh-eating cockroaches in Salt Lake City, which is not known for its humid conditions that are conducive to cockroaches.
It's after the apocalypse, Alex.
True.
The world has changed.
And then, as kind of like the insult to injury, they eat the only black guy in the film.
Yeah.
That was where I was like, it was stupid, and then I just got offended because Keegan was really awesome. I liked how he went from being in the Air Force to being like, wow, we kind of like, helped fuck up the world. I'm gonna quit the Air Force and spend the rest of the apocalypse painting murals on buildings. And then he gets eaten by flesh-eating cockroaches.
And that's after he survives Landmaster 2 digging in improperly. I mean, his douchey co-pilot dies, but he survives pretty well. It's like, hey, he actually, I mean, the movie could have been really lazy and killed him there, but no, he survives and we kill off the douchebag. Great. And then he dies in Salt Lake City 2 scenes later.
In just a really pointless way. Like,
he doesn't even die well. He just he gets in the cars they were looking at that had the bones in it and screams. Because apparently you can't run away from the area, even though they're cockroaches. They don't run that friggin' fast.
I mean, when provoked, they can scurry quite quickly for over, 3 feet.
Right, it's so confusing.
And then they're like, oh, I'm a Madagascar hissing roach and I'm really quite lazy. I'm going to sit down and read the newspaper.
That's what we'd expect, right? Like a scene of a bunch of little cockroaches in little chairs with tiny newspapers, and they all show up and go, what the hell's going on? It's like, look, man, we only get 1960s New York Times because you all stopped making papers, so fuck off.
That would have been such a better movie.
Right?
I mean, yeah, it's just, the whole killer cockroaches thing was just so bad and dumb on so many levels.
And it was one of the few things I remembered from watching this movie the first time. I remember, but I had it wrong. I thought the killer cockroaches were in Las Vegas.
Ah!
I conflated Las Vegas and Salt Lake City. So when they're in Las Vegas and they're playing the slot machines with these women, it's like, where's the cockroaches?
The cockroaches should come out of the... I mean, I kept waiting for something scary to happen in Las Vegas just because they were in fucking Circus, the creepiest casino ever invented.
That's the moment I was expecting the cannibals. Because how do you ignore that as your place? Because it was like a circus place.
Yeah.
And that was a great little scene, but they missed the mark on making that go bad real quick.
Yeah, and instead they were like, oh, here's a lady person who is, you can't understand half of her lines because the sound design in the movie is not great.
No.
Anyway, that is out of the scope of my dislike. My dislike is the killer cockroaches.
Well, I'm glad that you did that because it was something that annoyed me too, as someone from Florida who has met many cockroaches, realizing that even if they were radiated and grew large or something, they're still pretty harmless. Most roaches, right? It would have made more sense.
Well, and I'm sorry, if you want to make a cockroach scary, at minimum it has to fly because even a normal cockroach coming at your face is at least startling.
Right? Yeah. I mean, if they'd done ants or something, mutated ants, that might have made more sense because ants will clean a carcass, but no. Anyway. All right. Well, okay. Well, then we'll jump to Paul. Paul, what about you? Your one and only dislike.
I gotta pick just one. That's so sad. But I'm gonna go with the one that I thought Alex was going to go for, and I'm glad Alex didn't because it's all mine. Okay, so it's the end of the movie. So we had this massive giant flood in the ruins of the garbage dump where we have all the cars, the wrecking yard, and they floated out like Noah's Ark, and they come to land. And now we find out in short order when they hear the broadcast that they're 17 miles basically northeast of Albany. So okay, I can accept a new inland sea maybe somehow. With the Earth going off its axis, I could accept, okay, maybe there's new inland sea over most of New York State, which is what it would take for you to be 17 miles, because they say you're heading 08 something from us, which means they're basically northeast of Albany, so I guess whatever happened to the Hudson River, I don't know, but the inland sea's taking care of all that. I can accept that, okay. Taking the inland sea, okay, I can accept that. Maybe something weird happened with the Great Lakes. But why in the hell are there 10,000-foot mountains around Albany now? That is not the geography of New York State or New England at all. Where did those mountains come from? Those are not little Catskills or Adirondack mountains that they're driving, that we see at the end. Where did the mountains come from?
Okay, so like true story, Paul. I think it was before they got to Albany, but it was when they were coming in to go to the junkyard, and there's like a shot of the landscape, and Karina, who was kind of half watching it with me, was like, "Oh, so they made it to the Rocky Mountains."
Yeah.
Like, for some reason, the entire United States just looks like California.
Well, they probably didn't film it past there, now that I think about it.
Well, yeah, if we look at all the other scenes, desert and and plains and stuff, yes, I guess they filmed it all in California, and you can tell. So what is the answer to my conundrum?
So they did film it in almost all California, but it's definitely all west-southwest, with the exception of some lake scenes in Montana. But mostly it's California, a little bit in Arizona, and just a moment in Utah, where they were actually in Salt Lake City, apparently. So, you're welcome.
Wow. But thank you. It's just like, what the hell? It's just, I'm looking at these mountains. I didn't remember this from the one time I seen this movie. I didn't remember that, but that those mountains stood up, and you're like, what the hell? I got bad flashbacks to 2012 and how that decides to rearrange Earth geography.
Oh my god.
Yes.
The crust lifts up and flips over. That's how it works, right?
It doesn't even have 2012's pseudo-scientific rationale for the reason why there are now mountains, 14ers around Albany now. It just doesn't make sense.
So, okay, so my headcanon for you, Paul, is if you recall at the beginning of this film, the beginning after the apocalypse, we're introduced to our first non-desert realization that things are very different in the form of emperor scorpions that are very, very, very large, that have gotten very big, right? Which are hokey and a little poorly made, but whatever, right? I mean, the real emperor scorpions, but they're just like superimposed, or I don't know exactly how they did it. But my headcanon is that those mountains we saw are actually giant termite mounds. Because there are termites that are also large, just like the emperor scorpions got big. Don't ask me why emperor scorpions, which aren't even from the United States, are all large and in the desert. But termites definitely are in the United States, and they got mutated and made giant termite mounds that turned into mountains.
So you're saying Albany is doomed?
I'm saying, yeah, because eventually they're all going to be eaten. It's actually a tragedy. This film ends with nobody realizing they're all about to die.
That's better script writing than a lot of this film, Sean.
I know. And that's just because I'm a better writer than the studio that rewrote this film in editing. And I'm not pretending that this film was somehow better when it wasn't edited by the studio, because it probably wasn't as good. But I will note that the commander in this film who gets killed in the explosion, he apparently had lines in the original version of this movie, and the studio cut them all, so he spends the entire film saying nothing. He's just this like dude that everyone recognizes, I guess, is in charge, and then he dies unceremoniously.
He gets talked about, he's the center of the base, and he lost all his lines. Damn.
Yeah. I think he's even uncredited now, because they took his lines out. He's just like an extra. They basically reduced him to a non-speaking extra. The dude who was the cafe guy in Friends had more to do than this guy.
That's cold, Sean.
I know.
You're not wrong.
I'm not wrong. But yeah, so that's my headcanon. It's probably not true because it would be the only thing that would make sense. But, I don't think anybody who made this film had a geography degree.
They didn't have Alex and I to sick on them.
No. Or maps of the topographical maps of the United States. Even like a kid's map that would show where mountains are. They didn't even have that.
Yeah, I mean, the whole journey across the United States, unless this is your dislike, Sean, I'm not stealing it, am I?
Paul, there's plenty for me to choose from.
This whole idea how they decide to go across the United States, like, well, we're just going to go on a heading, like, even after an apocalypse, why wouldn't you want to use the interstate system instead of just, like, driving in random direction? Even with your fancy Landmaster cruiser, I'm not sure that's actually the best option you have. And I'd like to know where precisely they decided to cross the Rocky Mountains. Where did they cross? I mean, I've crossed the Rocky Mountains a couple of times in a couple of places. I'm trying to imagine how they managed that, especially if they seem to be assiduously avoiding every highway on the planet.
It seems to me like, I don't know about you, but I felt at after the apocalypse in those early sequences, that if this film had just been like about people on Mars in a Mars base that like had to like escape the planet for some reason, that this film would have just made more sense.
But there's the terrifying words at the beginning of the movie. This is the story of some of them, which means there are other stories of poor souls, unwritten, thankfully. I don't think Zelazny ever read any of those stories in this verse, trapped in this world.
Well, if they're trapped in this world, they are bored out of their damn minds.
I mean, they just needed to go to Albany because it's a magical place that is apparently completely untouched by the depredations of the polar ice cap, or the poles shifting for reasons.
Yeah.
I've been to Albany. It's the state capital of New York. It's got an interesting state capitol building, which kind of looks like a ducal palace more than, because it doesn't have like the normal dome capital shape that you have from most state capitals. It actually looks different and interesting. And Albany's hilly, and that's all I really have to say about Albany.
I love the part where he shows up on his motorcycle with the kid, and the immediate reaction of all the people there is, let's celebrate your arrival and hug. And I'm just like, oh, you sweet summer child, you haven't yet hit like the desperate, horrible, cynical hellhole of the world we live in now, where like most of our stories are like deeply pessimistic, where when strangers show up, they're probably gonna steal your shit.
Yes, I did. The Albanians are remarkably naive. Here we are, we're broadcasting, hi, come find us, and whereas we've seen that cannibal family and elder signs that this world is not a nice and pleasant world. Why are you advertising people to come to you? It's not going to end well. Have you not seen The Walking Dead? Oh wait, no, you haven't seen The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead hasn't been filmed yet.
It wasn't even a comic yet.
Wait, I've got a theory now. So my theory is, when they're trying to get they're in the junkyard and they're trying to get the parts for the Landmaster and the storm happens, they all actually die. And then the rest of it is just like their dying fever dream of like the world going back to how it should be. And then they all go to Albany and there's a bunch of kids that want to hug them.
That explains why the world suddenly, I mean, given the implausibility of the Earth going off its axis because of the nuclear war to begin with, the fact that it just suddenly decides to right itself one day automatically for reasons. Yeah.
And I mean, Billy even says it at some point, something to the effect of, nothing good just happens.
Which is a really cynical and hard-headed view, yes.
That was one of my favorite lines. It's so good. It's very cynical, but he actually gets probably the best line in the whole damn movie, because it's such a good line.
Yep.
So, okay, alright, well, I haven't done my dislike.
Oh yeah, you should do your dislike.
Yeah, I should definitely do mine. So, it's really, this movie, it's not good, but it's, as we've mentioned before, not the kind of film where we just like kind of can rage on it. I mean, little things, the cockroach thing, because it's totally fucking inaccurate, and things like that are annoying, but this film isn't like offensively bad, or like you just want to burn it. It's just really fucking boring, because the plot, I was actually surprised you gave more than just a single sentence, Alex, because the plot really is a bunch of dudes drive across the country and occasionally have adventures that are caused by their own stupidity.
And one lady person, so that people can threaten to rape her.
But as a plot, it's incredibly dull, because they seem to have forgotten that this story really only works if you have actual characters. And yet the film seems to leave out most of the character moments, with some brief exceptions. There's a moment when Winfield's Keegan, who originally Winfield, most people know him from The Terminator. He plays the lieutenant. He and the smarmy wannabe Richard Hatch basically sing a song over the radio, annoying the crap out of.
Oh, you mean Jam Uncle Vincent? Did you not recognize him?
I call him the discount Richard Hatch.
Airwolf fans back in the day would have disagreed with you, but go on.
Well, one of those shows lasted longer, so
True.
yeah.
It has
He
never
is the
been
discount
remade.
Starbuck. That's all he is.
Discount Starbucks.
Yes. So, but so my biggest problem with this film is really that the characters just seem to get left behind. There's no real character development. Billy's maybe a minor exception because he starts very deeply distrusting and ends more or less trusting. Although there's a lot of inconsistency because his character goes from deeply distrusting and intelligent to I'm just gonna go play around in a garbage place and then not pay attention to the fact that this guy's doing some crazy shit and making lots of noise, and maybe we should all hunker down. But really, the plot is just we end up in some new place, something that we didn't want to happen happens, and then we go to a new place and we make the same mistakes we did before. And it makes for incredibly dull viewing. Like, I could have fallen asleep if I wasn't in the Discord chat with two of our lovely patrons, because it's so dull. After the third time it happened, where Discount Starbuck basically went off on his own, and I was like, well, this is the moment when he's going to get in trouble again, isn't it? In fact, the ending of this movie, I expected he would show up in Albany, and the movie was going to end with him getting shot. Because that was what I kind of hoped, was like all of this other bullshit would lead to a tragic ending, because at least that might have been interesting. But that's not what we got. So yeah, so that's my dislike.
Okay, then.
Yeah.
Like, that's all you can say. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it really kind of speaks to the main objection that I think I dare say, Paul, I will speak to you for a moment, that I think we all had, which is just this movie was like so boring and so long.
I didn't remember it being boring along, but then again, I only remembered pieces of the movie, and I conflated Salt Lake City with the Las Vegas scenes together. So there you go. It's like I remembered. Oh yeah, this is exciting. They have giant insects and killer cockroaches, and they drive across country. Yeah, this is a great movie. I thought it was going to be like, I'm going to the voice of positivity for this podcast, and then I rewatched it and like, oh, maybe not. It's not a bad movie, but oh my god, is this movie as dull as dishwater?
Yeah, and I mean, we while I was watching it, I was, reading things on Wikipedia as I was crocheting, because, I mean, there's that much time to do anything in this movie, because every shot is at least 20% too long, and there are many shots that should not have existed at all.
Yeah.
And, like, one of the things I looked up was, oh, what's this movie about? Oh, it's a Zelazny novel, and apparently the movie really doesn't have anything to do with the novel, but,
And Zelazny despised the film.
Rightly so.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mentioned this to Karina, who was watching it with me, and she was like, really, a novel? I mean, I guess Zelazny wrote kind of like short novels, but, it doesn't even feel like a novel. And then I went and looked at more information about the novel, and it was like, oh, the novel started out as a novella, and then he expanded it out to a novel because his agent wanted him to, and he even didn't think it was good. And this, I have to share, because as much as it pains me to agree with Barry Maltzberg about anything, when the novel was published, he found it to be an interesting novella converted into an unfortunate novel, and faulted it as a mechanical, simply transposed action-adventure story written, in my view, at the bottom of the man's talent.
Ow, ow, ow.
Oh, now I know who Barry Maltzberg is. Yeah, okay. It's the SFWA bulletin guy.
Yeah. The guy I yelled at the same time I was yelling at Mike Resnick. But, like, so it's kind of hilarious that even though the movie has, like, nothing to do with the novel, it is still so spiritually connected to it, in the fact that it's basically a short story that someone added, like, 40,000 words of fluff to.
At least.
I mean, this could have been a Twilight Zone episode. Okay, maybe it's an Outer Limits episode or something like that, and been nice and tight.
Oh yeah, I totally agree.
like 45 minutes max.
Yeah, that would have worked.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at least would have worked better than this, because holy crap! Like, I got about, I think, minute 30, and I was just like, this isn't literally just going to be driving for the full hour and 30 or whatever number of minutes this is, because Oh my god, it was just them sitting around in the fucking thing just driving, and then occasionally someone would say something, and then Discount Starbuck would say something vaguely interesting, but was never interesting enough, and even still, like, nobody's fucking commented about the part, like, I just gotta say this, okay, so at the beginning of the post-apocalyptic part of this film, right, there's this moment when he randomly finds a woman at some other town, which I guess is just a thing you do if you go, scavenging. Occasionally you just find a random woman, because this film confirms it twice that that's what happens. So, word of advice for the world, if in a post-apocalyptic situation and you can't find any women, just go searching for supplies, and apparently you'll find one, because they just, like, live in, like, basements, and they just wait to be found.
This is going to change my Apocalypse World RPGs so much.
They're like potatoes. Like, you just dig up the ground and one comes up, apparently. Right?
You go, like, break a barrel and a woman falls out.
Yeah. So,
oh, God.
So he finds this woman, right? And he's talking to Keegan, and, like, Keegan's, like, doing his painting thing, because that's what you do. And the scorpions come out, and he's on a motorcycle, right? Our Discount Starbuck. And he just decides, I'm just going to throw the woman off, who puts no fight up at all. She just falls into the sand. It gets eaten by scorpions, and then he, like, tries to drive away. But the thing that didn't make any fucking sense to me is he could have just kept her on the motorcycle. It wasn't.
It was a mannequin.
Well, yeah, and that was even worse. The fucking
It was mannequin the entire time. I mean, Keegan didn't know.
Well, and then later he's kind of like, yeah, dude, I sort of made out with that mannequin.
Wait,
and you're
wait, so it was meant to be a mannequin?
Yes, all the entire time.
It was a mannequin.
Oh, Jesus.
Like, he found a real doll, and he put it on the back of the motorcycle, and then he was like, oh, I gotta dump this weight to get away from the scorpions. I mean, the kind of hilarious part is, so when they're in Salt Lake City, and he's on the motorcycle with the lady that's not a mannequin,
right,
and they're trying to escape the cockroaches, and they do that, like, jump onto that parking garage.
Yes, the evil moment.
Yeah, and he kind of falls over. In that moment, you could actually tell that the woman is a fucking mannequin again.
Yeah, it's not a stunt double. It's
Wait,
bad.
so, okay, I gotta ask, because, so, is it meant to be a mannequin the first time?
Yes.
Yes,
it is. Because then he comes up and Keegan shoots us saying, "You asshole, being there," and Discount Starbuck. Now you got me doing it. Tanner says, "Yeah, well, take a look," and then he looks through the glasses and he sees it's a mannequin being sworn by the scorpions, and he says, "Oh," and then Tanner goes like, "I was even talking to her all the way and all this stuff, and does that make me crazy?"
And he made out with her. The mannequin.
Does that make me crazy? And Paul Winfield just looked.
And Keegan's kind of like,
yes, but I'm not going to say it.
Oh, wow. So I had even less faith in these characters in this film, because I just assumed it was a real woman, and that when they did the mannequin shot, it was just like the shittiest effect shot ever.
Oh, but no! Oh my God! So you thought he crossed the moral event horizon at the beginning of the movie? Oh God!
No, I thought it was a person. I thought it was meant to be a person, and then they used the mannequin.
Yeah, that he would abandon her like that. Oh my God, you had a real strange view of the character.
Well, because it never made sense to me, because that character keeps doing the same stupid shit over and over and over, and keeps getting in trouble and almost getting, or in some cases, getting people killed. And that, I just assumed that was his character, is he had found a woman, an actual woman, and it was meant to be a woman. They just didn't pay, I guess, for the effect shot and just used a mannequin.
No,
that was a bit. But I mean, you know, he's pretty, not smart.
He is not smart. No, he's never been accused of that.
Intelligence is his dumb stat.
Yeah.
I did want to mention that I tweeted while I was watching this. So I started tweeting at 8:02. That's when I started, 8:02 p.m. That's when I started watching the movie. At 8:30 p.m., I tweeted, starting to realize that Damnation Alley is not actually in possession of 91 minutes worth of plot.
It is not. It is not.
So it took me 28 minutes.
I think this film, like, if we just took this and we deleted a bunch out, this film would have been it would have started from the post-apocalypse. It would have had our character Keegan making some paintings, right? Would have had them deciding we need to leave, and then the big explosion, and then they leave, and then we would have gone to the clown area where the circus, and then that's where the cannibals were, and then we would have found like the cannibals had been like keeping the French actress lady, and that was friends with George Peppard, and then they would have rescued her, and then they would have found Billy the next day, and then they would have got to Albany, and then Albany turned out to also be cannibals, and so they had to fight their way out. But then they mysteriously ended up downriver and had a flash flood, and then they ended up very much Noah-like at an actual little community where people weren't cannibals. And they were very grateful because these people showed up and said, like, well, we've got this big thing that can shoot rockets and shit. And they went, well, great, because those fucking cannibals from Albany keep coming here and stealing our kids. And now you can go fuck them up. And then that would have been the movie ended where George Peppard's like sitting in his vehicle going, I will kill all of them for you. And then they would have renamed him and put face paint on him. And he would have been known as the great protector. That's how I want it to end. And Discount Starbuck would have drowned. Yeah. Drowned or eaten.
Yeah, I could have done without him. He was...
Oh, okay. I want to point out one thing about Tanner. So you got me doing it that you may not have noticed in this movie. So, I mean, we start off with him with the mannequin and that whole drama. Then we find the French piano player, and I was expecting like, okay, maybe I forgot a romance between the two of them because small group, it would be an obvious thing, and we get the whole bit where the kid pretends to be the son of the two of them. But then at the end, where they're talking in Albany, Tanner's all like, oh, I don't care. She sounds like a redhead to me. I don't care if she's 65. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. So you're not gonna have a romance with the French girl? You've been so weird and desperate and lonely for companionship that you were making out with a mannequin? You're not even going to broach a relationship or try?
I mean, I actually want to reserve that as a like.
Okay, I'll shut up at that point.
Well, that's a perfect transition then, because we have been rambling about the film, and now I think it's a good time for us to shift over to likes, which takes us straight to you, Alex.
I mean, I guess, okay, I don't want this to be my only like, because I actually have a better like, but I actually did like that, other than the encounter with the rapey cannibal cultists, who, that's why they needed a woman in the movie, so the rapey cannibal cultists could be like that. Other than that, the guys were actually super cool to her, where they were just like, oh yeah, you're here, you're part of the team, alright, it's awesome. Discount Starbuck didn't hit on her at all.
Which is what I was expecting.
Yeah, so that was like actually really charming to me, and I mean, J. Jonah Jameson was like a perfect gentleman to her, and there was like, after the cannibal dudes, like, there was this weird shot of it, like, oh, and then she's in the shower, and here's her naked shoulder, and then it went back to being like, and now she's just, like, a person who's in the thing, and it was just kind of nice to have, like, a female character that, other than a couple discrete moments, was not, like, so much the object of the male gaze, and obviously only there so Discount Starbuck could get his hump on. So, like, that was actually kind of cool and unusual.
Yeah, it took me by surprise. It's just, especially after the whole, cannibal cultists, and they pretend to be a nuclear family. It's like, okay, they're gonna make the subtext text. No, they're just gonna go back, and he seems more interested in the woman on the radio. Okay.
Yeah. So that was cool and unexpected. But my real like.
Your real like.
My real like is J. Jonah Jameson's mustache, which there are several scenes in this movie of him engaging in mustache grooming so that you can see that he is the torchbearer for civilization, and he will not let it die on his watch, because no matter what, he still has a fucking perfect mustache and he's still shaving. I mean, there were other things that I could complain about that character, particularly his amazing disappearing, reappearing accent.
Yeah, he's supposed to be Southern, and it wavers a lot.
Whew, yeah, we were like, I couldn't tell where he was supposed to be from, and I don't think he could tell where he was supposed to be from either, but his mustache was always fucking spectacular, and I have mad respect for that. And that's my like.
Okay, yeah. Well, it did make me amused that they made a big point about the vehicles having enough for them to shower at least once a week. and just how much attention they paid to grooming. Like, nobody ever seemed dirty, ever, in these movies, with the exception of Billy, who was a little dirty.
I mean, they say, we can all have a shower once a week, whether we like it or not.
Right, because he's like this military man who follow the orders, etc., etc. So I guess grooming is part of that.
You know, and another turn of something kind of unexpected for the post-apocalyptic movie, at no point does he become like the crazy military dude.
That's true. He's very measured, right? He's stern but measured.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that movies should exist to give like a fluff job to the American military, but like post-apocalyptic movies are like so standard, like there's the crazy military guy who's like, I'm gonna run this ship and you know, my way or the highway, and I'm gonna have you whipped or whatever. And instead, I feel like JJ actually, which is not his real name, he looks like fucking JJ.
He does.
It's acceptable.
He wants pictures of Spider-Man and to survive the apocalypse. But like, what actually it felt like with him was someone who actually knew people who were in the military and not nuts, who were like, no, if they survived the apocalypse, they'd be really good at being on a team and at taking care of each other.
Until your base explodes because you smoked in a place with leaking gas.
Well, I mean, that wasn't his fault, but even then, he's like, all right, I'm going to gather the people that there are left, and I'm going to get everyone where we need to go alive, and I'm not going to be a nut about it. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah, he had a plan, and he executed his plan and didn't go all Captain Queeg.
Oh, yeah. So that was also nice. I'm going to connect that to his beautifully groomed mustache.
Well, okay.
I mean, my only regret is that we didn't get to see him go to Albany and, like, have a beer, and then there was foam all over the beautiful mustache.
That would have been the ending shot. Yeah, that's such a beautiful shot, right? As he looks out on the sunset and he gets a nice foamy beer, and then his mustache just got foam.
Yes, but sadly, he's not the hero of this movie. John Michael Vincent is the hero of this movie.
I mean, that's such bullshit. We all know that JJ was the hero. He was, like, he was Team Dad.
I know, but clearly we're supposed to think that Jan Michael Vincent is the hero of this movie.
Discount Starbuck.
Discount Starbuck.
Thank you.
They're clearly framing it that way, even if they subvert it sometimes because he doesn't get the girl or anything like that. But he's the one that goes to Albany, and he's the mentor figure for the kid and all that stuff. So yeah. I mean, JJ might be Team Dad, but he's a secondary role. Sadly.
That's just sad.
And he's the character who's named for the character in the very, very unconnected book.
Oh, that's true, yeah. Discount Starbuck
is Hell Tanner, yes.
Loosely connected to Hell, yeah, because he's got the last name Tanner and he rides around on a dirt bike.
This movie just would have been kind of better if it had just been John Hannibal Smith and Lieutenant Drexler as the primaries, as your defaults.
And then they'd get the lady person and treat her with respect, and...
Yeah.
You know, and then see the world's creepiest serial killer hut that's covered with dead animals and be like, I want to be friends with the person who lives in that. But anyway.
Jesus.
Well, I mean, that's like when they drive up to where Billy was living, which is like a serial killer log cabin that's covered with dead animals. I was like, oh, now we've gotten to the cannibals. And instead they pick up Billy there because... I totally want to be friends with somebody who lives in the dead animal house.
Like, okay, so we gotta talk about the Billy scene, because the Billy scene's fucking ridiculous. So they drive up.
It's so dumb.
They drive up and up to these cabins, right? And here's this kid who has like been living on his own for apparently for 4 moons, because apparently it just takes a few years for apparently people to just stop recognizing that days are days, even though he would have been raised in a time when he would have learned what days are. But yes, so in 4 moons, he hadn't seen his...
How would he have counted them?
They're fucking days!
Right, but it's like you say, he could have said, 100 days. I mean, he might not be thinking about that, but...
3 months!
3 months, but...
4 months, but if we're counting 4 moons...
But if you take away calendars and your phone and everything else, how well would you stay to the pattern of days versus something else?
It has been, 5 years?
No, well, we don't know how long it's been. It's never said.
Well, George Papard did not age, so it hasn't been very long. Okay, so anyway,
George Papard is one of the immortals,
right? Or
Duh.
possibly that's also all of them apparently.
And Discount Starbuck. Oh God, no. Jan Michael Vincent does look. He looks significantly younger at the beginning before the nuclear war than after. He does look like he aged.
That's because, Paul, they filmed that section, they filmed it chronologically, and the first part of it actually aged him 6 years.
Okay.
That's how it works. Yeah, it's accelerated aging because they were really bored.
Wait, so you're saying that the movie was actually filmed in real time, so it is like 6 years long?
That explains a lot.
Right, yeah, they basically spent most of the 1970s making this movie, and then the studio realized, so this movie is 90% just people driving. And they went, yes. And the studio said, you gotta add cannibals, or something. And they went, fine, we'll add some cannibals and some hissing cockroaches. And that's how they got the film out.
But you were telling us about the Billy scene.
Billy. So they find Billy, and Billy is understandably, he's been living up in the middle of fucking nowhere, and his dad's dead, we find out. Not very friendly, because this giant like tank vehicle thing shows up, and he's got a bunch of adults screaming at him, and he decides to throw some rocks to get them to go away, and hits Discount Starbuck twice, because Discount Starbuck apparently does not know how to duck. He has no hip motion. He was not a basketball player or a football player or any variety of that. He just knows how to ride motorcycles vaguely well. And so the response to this is not, hey, let's like take a calm reaction to this, but let's have Discount Starbuck literally chase the kid down, confirming everything he has believed up to that point, which is that people aren't trustworthy, because he's being chased down by an adult-ass man who tackles him and gets in a fight with him, and BTW actually gives Discount Starbuck a run for his money, which is sad. And then, like, it's all just fine. But the whole time I kept thinking about this is, like, what? Just let the kid go. Like, he clearly does not want anything to do with you all. Just keep going. Or at the very least, kick Discount Starbuck in the nuts and, like, send him to the to the corner by himself, because he needs time out so that you could talk to the kid. Because it makes no sense. Why would you chase him? It's obvious that that's going to scare the shit out of him. But they do it anyway, because
with
logic.
the bike, no less.
With the bike, which, yeah. We, of course, learn a little bit later why he's, of course, distrustful, because apparently there are, in fact, cannibals, which I had been waiting for fucking most of the movie for, was some cannibals, and it took them forever to give me cannibals, bastards.
But at least we had the cannibals in a diner, which I thought was a nice touch.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the other people in the Discord chat noticed that too. It's like, yeah, it's in a diner. What a perfect spot to have cannibals, because they have all the tools they need to make a delicious people burger. All right. Well, anyway, okay. So where are we?
I think it's Paul's like.
It's Paul's like, yeah.
Paul's like, okay. So we've been going through much dislikes, even though this movie isn't that terrible. Okay, so I did like a few moments in this movie, a few character moments in this movie. They're kind of lost in the sea of everything, but, you know, the movie tries sometimes to make it work. I mean, you already mentioned what happened with when Paul Winfield basically quits the Air Force along with Tanner, and he decides, the heck with it. Okay, I'll stay on base. I'll just paint murals, because painting and drawing is my thing, and we saw that nicely before with the sketches that we see him when we see him introduced with. So that was a nice little, like, okay, so he's just going to make art after the apocalypse. That's cool. Another little thing I liked that you probably didn't notice is when they're getting ready to leave, J.J. Jameson, a.k.a. George Papard, a.k.a. the Major, takes the time to take down the American flag and fold it. And I thought, that's a nice moment. It shows he's still a soldier. He still cares. That's right military procedure for decommissioning a base. I applaud you. And then the third one I liked is the casino scene before the woman shows up, and they're wandering around. They look at the slot machines. They start putting in the slot machines. They get some coins. They start playing some more. And we even see George Papard look at the machine and he's got the coin, he's thinking, and then he starts doing it. And then, did you notice the sound started coming up and it started to sound like it was a real casino again?
Yeah, I did. I thought that was actually a really nice shot. It was well done.
I like that. So it's like it almost is like a momentary back to normal. They could pretend they're really still in Vegas and still doing their thing. I really like, and then everything stops when he sees the woman. But I thought like that's a nice little character moment. And then the movie devolves into bad killer cockroaches and cannibals and a junkyard and a sea and mountains that should not exist anywhere near Albany. Boo.
I mean, those are the moments that I wanted. I wanted more of those because when it does character moments, they're actually really good. The casino scene, great. The scene when they're singing to each other over the radio and annoying all the very military guys, great. Yes. Right? But then they sort of like forget that for like most of the rest of the movie with some very minor exceptions. And it's really unfortunate because when it's on those character moments, it's a solid 70s film. You can kind of get into it and you're like, oh, these kind of characters are a little charming. It's really nice.
There is one thing I would have liked to know more about the Major that he never says anything afterwards. How does he feel about his wife dying? Because his wife was in Chicago. He says that at the beginning of the movie. And Chicago got nuked. How does he feel about that?
Yeah.
What does he think about that? He never says a word about it.
What's a problem this film has overall, which is that characters don't seem to react like they're in an apocalypse.
Yeah, I mean, and I will say, like, at the very beginning of the movie, when all the nuclear weapons are being launched and they're in the bunker and stuff, like that, I actually was sitting there going, oh, this is a really kind of cool stylistic choice where there's not a lot of music and everyone seems like super calm and it's kind of business as usual as the world is ending and it's kind of like the sort of banality of the apocalypse. And then the movie went on and I was like, oh no, I think the director just doesn't know how to direct people.
Yeah, I wondered if it was an effect at the beginning too, because they just so matter-of-factly go about ending the world. And yeah, no, it was not a stylistic choice. It just seems to be the director. Sadly.
Yeah, it's just very unfortunate because the actors in this are... I'm not going to say that they're all the highest caliber in terms of their careers up to this point, with the exception perhaps of Winfield, who had an Academy Award nomination up to this point for a film he did in 1972. And others have certainly a lot of TV work, etc. But they're not people who can't emote. That can't demonstrate some feeling other than the kind of smarmy discount Starbucks smiley stuff. Like, I want more. I want to know what they're feeling. Like, they just experienced an apocalypse. That's gotta suck. Almost all of them, I just have to assume that all of their loved ones are dead. So, like, maybe, like, small things. Like, you could have Winfield, like, he's painting people, and then they have a moment where they ask him, like, well, who are you painting? And they say, oh, well, this is my mom. I'm trying to recall her from memory. Like, they could have just had that. Like, that would have been, like, a really nice touch, and then they kind of, like, have a silent moment, and then, the discount Starbucks goes and rides his bike and, like, does a cool kickflip off of a scorpion or something. Having moments where characters are sort of acknowledging, like, we're still going on because we're military, right? Like, especially J. Jonah Jameson, who's so military. We're still going on, but I'm going to acknowledge, like, that there is this side to me that is emotional and that I'm trying to hold back because I'm trying to hold things together, but, like, I'm hurting. Like, that would have been really nice. The one person who seems to have some emotion maybe is the French piano player, or maybe Billy a little bit. Mostly he presents it as fear, but you get some of that. I don't know. And even when things happen to characters, they like don't react. So like the sort of cannibal rapey scene, they mentioned, Alex, that the shower at the end of that, but there isn't a reaction. Like, this was actually a very scary thing that was just, it just felt like, what, just taking a shower. Which I guess is fine, but you would have thought there'd be some sort of acknowledgement, like this is actually a scary thing that just happened and that we just barely averted. But anyway.
So again, I think we're down to your like, Sean.
Well, gee willikers. Well, there's only really one left. So I know that we're saying this film isn't as bad as other films, and we are actually criticizing it quite a lot, I've realized. And I think it's just because that a lot of what we're saying about this film is that it is not bad because it's not actively terrible. It's just sort of misses the marks. But I will say one thing where I was just very satisfied is the soundtrack for this film was fucking phenomenal. I absolutely loved it. It was Jerry Goldsmith, who most of you know is doing some rather popular soundtracks. And I just really enjoyed the soundtrack from start to finish. I just really thought it was well put together. It's certainly not a perfect soundtrack, but it seemed like the thing where the most effort was put into it. And I just really appreciated it because it was really pleasant to listen to. It fit the tone of what was happening, even if what was happening on screen didn't necessarily tonally match it. But it was really nice to just listen to that. I would love to have that in my collection because I thought it was a really fantastic soundtrack. And I realize that's like the quickest like in the world because we've just been rambling. But
well, I got one question for the two of you since we haven't mentioned them at all. And they cost apparently at the time $300,000 a piece. How do we feel about the Landmasters?
Right. They're made by the Jeffries Automotive Company.
Yeah, I actually went and read the Wikipedia article about the Landmasters, and I was like, this is really fucking cool. This is like the coolest thing about the entire movie. And I mean, they look neat. They actually look like functional vehicles. I'm sure if you tried to run them the way they were running them, they wouldn't work that well. But I mean, yeah, I thought the Landmasters were actually super boss.
Landmaster 1 to Landmaster 2. I mean, that phrase was in my mind for years after seeing this movie years and years ago. I just had that bit and the killer cockroaches in my head for all this time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, I mean, having multiple wheels and in case one gives away and to reduce tire wear. I mean, they obviously get terrible gas mileage, but I mean, the one douchey guy who soon dies, let's talk about, they climb a 60-degree hill and operate in water. I mean, he sounds very proud of what he and George Peppard have made. And did you get, in the end, even they have to stop in Detroit for parts, do get them across the country and after Apocalypse, so you can't say no to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't like them at first, but the more I kind of think about them, I really appreciated that they actually showed some of the functionality of them. So there's this bit about the wheels that can spin, but they actually show it at one point when the wheel spins as a consequence of, I think they lose traction and have some like pretty crazy moments where they got to get it out of a stuck spot or something. And it like spins to help improve the traction to get them moving again, which I thought was really neat because it's got this triple like triangle thing going on with the wheels. The only thing I had issues with is like when they filmed that they made one, but I think they meant to make two, but they didn't finish the second one. I don't remember exactly, but they were meant to have two because there's two in the film. And I got confused because when they showed up, I thought, did the thing drive out of the garage twice? Or is there meant to be a second one? Because the scenes that came after, they only had one in the screen. And it was like super confusing because they didn't understand why we had two of them when you could easily have just put all the gas from the second one into the first one. It would have been fine. But other than that, I thought they were pretty neat. And in retrospect,
I figured the Major wanted to because, you know, he's a super prepared military guy. In case one breaks, you have a second. So I figured he was just being very, very thorough. I mean, he could easily have had them all in the one to start with, but, you know, he wasn't going to put all his eggs in one basket. And I mean, as we lose the first one pretty quickly to that storm, and Alex, I now realize that storm where he's driving the storm is a very bad version of the Fury Road scene.
Right?
Yeah.
It's so sad.
I mean, on the Fury Road podcast, I geeked out about them driving into that giant storm, and here it's very, very sad and pours. Like, now I want to rewatch Fury Road to see it done right.
That's a good point.
Yeah, because it's such a good scene in Fury Road, and this you're just like, how did you make a scene about two Landmasters driving into a field of tornadoes seem slow-paced and boring? How?
Right?
They managed.
I mean, it's talent. It's really talent.
It does take effort to be that uninteresting. Yeah, that's some effort.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I think we've hammered out. I mean, there's certainly other little tidbits and stuff we could probably talk about, but I feel like we've hammered this out pretty good. So, shall we get to our final thoughts and grades?
Yeah.
All right, Alex, final thoughts and your grade, go.
I mean, so basically, for all that we were kind of, complaining about a lot of stuff, nothing in this movie made me honestly actively angry. So, I mean, as a torture cinema movie, it kind of failed. I was mostly just like, it occupies this weird space where you could almost do it like a regular movie, and then you would just be like, oh, well, let's sort of analyze it, because we did that a lot anyway, and it's just real slow and real boring. So basically, I just wish that they'd only made it about 25 minutes long, and then it would have been fine. And I think I'm just gonna give it a C-, because it was just real other than JJ's mustache.
Other than J. Jonah Jameson. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's really like they needed to refocus about how it's an epic journey of a mustache and the man it's attached to going across the country.
Coming from Pixar in 2020.
Yes.
The mustache and the man.
Of men and mustaches.
Of men and mustaches, yes. A+. You get an A+ for that. Well, perfect. All right, well, let's go to you, Paul. What about you?
Well, like I said, I had seen this year ago, and I remembered basically Killer Cockroaches, although I meant them in wrong city, and Landmaster 1 to Landmaster 2, and I was expecting this to be almost like, okay, this is going to be like The Black Hole. This is going to be like, I'm going to be the one to defend this movie because it's going to be a pain to my childhood, and no, The Black Hole is a much better movie than this. Don't at me, listeners. This was just, as you said, Alex, it's mostly just dull and plotting, and it's not an exciting post-apocalypse when it really could have been if it really wanted to be. I mean, yeah, there's not a lot of plot to it, so either you make this a 10-episode series and you flesh out the things, or you make this a 60-minute Twilight Zone episode. Either way, what it is it's a boat car of a movie and a boat car of a length, and it just doesn't work. I'm gonna steal your grade and go with the C- too.
Would you say that the Landmasters are really just big boat cars?
Yes, and because they even float in water. Yes,
amphibious vehicles.
And I think they shot the shot of them in the water, like they actually are. I don't think they're moving because I think the wheels just keep them in place, but they do churn them, which is kind of neat. I think that's a real shot in this.
Yeah.
Okay, well, for me, so yeah, I concur with what everyone else is saying. It is not total trash. We've watched films where it's just you really want to burn the film. You want to do something other than watch it because it's that bad. Cull is that bad. Cull is one of the worst films we have watched for torture cinema.
Cole, I give it to you, Cole, and keep it if you can. I didn't even watch them. I wasn't even on that episode.
I know, but, just remember that the soundtrack will just awkwardly go into heavy metal at any moment. So, oh God. That movie's actively terrible because everything about it is just bad, 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 bad. This movie is dull. It's not that it's bad, it's not good. It's not expertly crafted, but it's not a kind of film where I just feel like a worse person having, like, I don't feel like I've wasted time or feel like a part of me has died after watching it. I just feel like this is a film that I'm gonna forget. And for that reason, I'm kind of with you two. I think a C- is probably accurate. I mean, you could maybe be meaner to it and give it a D+, but I feel like anything in the D territory, I have to at least remember that it was bad. This is a film that in 3 years, I probably will forget I have watched it unless I'm reminded. And for that reason, I just feel like it's a C-. It has to be. So that puts us at an obvious average.
This is the first time we've had the exact same grade across the spectrum.
Yeah, because usually I'm meaner than you guys. Unless it's Mac and me, in which case I can't remember what I gave.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the C's are just kind of like...
Meh.
Yeah. Yeah, like, this movie didn't really make me mad. It was there.
It was there. We watched it.
I feel like, yeah. I mean, I would give anything that I feel like it wasn't that it was the worst thing, but I probably would forget watching it, a C-. That's probably where I'd always put C- is. C+ is sort of like, it's verging on being a good movie, but isn't quite there yet. But C- is definitely like forgettable, not terrible, but not good. Just sort of like you won't remember that you watched it in 5 years. So
hopefully our listeners will remember we watched it, and maybe our listeners hopefully will vote for us in the Hugos this year.
Yeah, you heard Paul. Get out your fucking voting card and put down Skiffy and Fanny. I'm like translating from the niceness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking to you. Yeah, you. Right? Yeah, you. I want you to click the link, Skiffy and Fanny.
Yeah, I think that these are very good things that people should do is put us as number 1 in the Fancast category. That would be very nice.
We're number 1, all others are number 2 or lower.
I think that's an accurate, self-assessment. That's fair.
It's the way I would vote.
Yeah. Of course we're all going to vote this podcast number 1. What asshole is on the podcast and then be like, I'm going to put it number 5? Like, no, you're putting it number 1 on the fucking list. Like, come on.
you know that somewhere, like, one person on the Skiffy and Fanny team just, like, dropped their Diet Coke and was like, oh shit, Sean knows.
I know. I count the numbers and then I run regression statistical analysis and shit on it. I know. No, I don't. I don't know. I don't even look at the statistics until someone at the convention, like, hey, look at the statistics, and then shoves it in my face. I'm like, I really don't want it. Okay, fine. And then I just accept that this punishment will be put upon me. But yeah. So in any case, vote. And vote in the other categories. There's a lot of great stuff up for Hugos, so go vote.
Yes.
There you go. Well, thank you, Alex and Paul. We're here for this episode together, trying to be more interesting than the film we watched.
I think we succeeded.
I think we did.
I mean, I think everyone now knows more about Madagascar hissing cockroaches than when we started, and really, that's all we can ask for.
Honestly, I feel like that right there deserves a Hugo.
We're educational,
it's a deliverable.
Yeah.
Yes!
That's actually like what's like the medal that they give, like the president gives, like, not this president, but whatever the next one is that isn't this one, right? Gives to, like, people who provide educational service to society. I'm just going to say that the American Super
It's the
Medal
Medal
of
of
Awesome.
Freedom?
Is it the Medal of Freedom? Sure. Medal of Freedom. I think we should get that.
Yeah! Just like Ellen did, but Ellen is cooler than us, I'll admit that.
Yeah, she does have the cool factor up. She's like a cool factor 7.
I mean, it's Pride Month. We need to all take a moment to bow to Ellen. Anyway!
Okay.
You're welcome, citizens.
On that note, awkward ending and scene. If you would like to support this show, you can go to patreon.com/SkiffyandFanty or find us on Twitter @SkiffyandFanty, our webpage SkiffyandFanty.com, or you can even send us an email at SkiffyandFanty@gmail.com. The intro music for this podcast was taken from Rock Thing by Creo. You can find out more about their music on freemusicarchive.org.